Hey guys, sorry, it's been a minute. I've been busy with vacation and sickness as well. But today, since Vow of Iron has been delayed, I've got a video on the available aspects in Deepwoken. The video is in a tier list format, starting from worst and going to best, but I want to admit because of how small the advantages most aspects give are, a majority of the bottom tiers could be rearranged in some ways. The stats that aspects give will not be mentioned, as you can just use an echo upgrade to get rid of them. Regardless, this video has information on every aspect, so if you disagree with me, there's still something in it for you. Oh, and I should mention, I'm not including drip in the rankings, otherwise this list would be totally skewed and biased. Let's get started with the bottom of the barrel, the F tier. For my pick, as the very worst aspect in Deepwoken, I'm going to go with the Grimoire. I want to go in depth as to how bad this aspect is, but there's not much to mention in all honesty. You get a marker that points east, that's all it gives you. You could have made an argument that this at the very least was useful before the introduction of maps, but honestly, I disagree with that statement as well. As if you don't know the layout of the map, how is knowing which way is east going to help you? Fret not though, with the introduction of maps, Grimoire's got the ability to place a marker on the map and follow it. Honestly, I didn't even know this was in the game until I was making this video, but it's incredibly useless, and it's made redundant by the very feature that gives it purpose. Overall, the Grimoire is a useless aspect. Don't worry though, Grimoire fans, it's not alone in the F tier. It's joined by the very mediocre Celtor. Celtors are honestly more underwhelming than Grimoires are. They get a buff to their boat's HP, as well as reduced cost on boats. But let's be honest, the speed advantage an ironclad gives compared to a dinghy isn't making that discount anything special. I do however think that Celtor is more useful than Grimoire, since you at least depend on boats when you're fighting the ocean world bosses, but that's about it. Also, just as a note, I'm trying to keep it to 2 aspects per tier for this video, or else we would have a tier list very much skewed towards most things being C tier. With that being said, let's take a look at the bottom of our D tier. Etrians honestly sound good on paper. The duration of all status effects, good or bad, is reduced by 15%. However, this statement is just a lie. The only status effects that apply to this are chilling, suffocation, and potions. Now, you can argue that Etrian should be higher on this list for this, as reducing the time you're suffocated for, or the amount of time you're dealing with a pesky salt chemist ether drain potion would be quite helpful. However, it also makes good potions worse on you, rendering Etrians just the worst choice for running salt chemist, which I think makes it fall lower on my list. Additionally, a lot of Gale builds will be running Spectre, so you aren't going to be getting suffocated as often as you would have in verse 1. I think Etrians do have niche use cases where they are useful, but overall they fall flat. Next on my list I have Canors, which I could see the argument going both ways. On one hand, if you play alone, Canors are completely useless. They do nothing. But in a big guild, dealing 35% less damage to allies and receiving 35% less damage from allies could be pretty helpful. Especially if you're running a support build and you want to be close to your allies without minding if you're getting hit a little bit. Not to mention that this effect does stack with the talent Give and Take, so you can receive nearly 50% damage reduction overall. I had trouble ranking Canors, as their use case for their talent is kinda weird. I still think it's more useful than the other 3 aspects we talked about, but I could definitely understand if you disagree. Moving on to the C tier, I have a pick which might honestly surprise some people, but I think the Adret falls into here. From what I've gathered, a lot of the community either thinks Adret is a top tier must-have pick, or the absolute worst aspect you could have. I think it's somewhere in the middle ground. A lot of people don't like progression, and Adrets make that part of the game much easier. Additionally, you get higher starting reputation with all factions, which I don't think most people know. Regardless, once your build is maxed, this aspect does become pretty obsolete, meaning I can't, in good consciousness, put it anywhere higher than C tier. After the Adret, I have Capras, which are in a pretty similar boat to the Canor. They are utterly useless when you're by yourself, but with teammates, they do give pretty good healing to allies, as well as reduce sanity gain and some hunger buffs. Honestly, I think this aspect is pretty much as 5 out of 10 as you can get, with nothing really going for or against it. That's why I put it here at the top of C tier. Now next, it breaks my heart to say this, as personally it's my favorite aspect, but T-Rans are going to be at the bottom of our B tier. There is admittedly some bias in putting them this high, as all of their buffs could be replaced with something else. For example, the built-in glider T-Rans have can just be crafted with a mere 2 Sharko hide and 2 sticks. Hell, 2 cloth and 2 sticks even. Not even mentioning that with echoes you can just start with a glider. Furthermore, their reduced fall damage can just be completely disregarded if you wear a T-Ran pendant. So, if the buffs are so redundant, how can I justify placing T-Rans this high? Well, honestly, it's convenience, and how they can change gameplay. First of all, their reduced fall damage is still very much helpful on low agility builds, as running a T-Ran pendant honestly doesn't make sense for 95% of slots. Being able to jump down and not worry about fall damage too much is super helpful. Additionally, when you're playing on a T-Ran slot, you find yourself using your glider way more than you would in any other aspect, since you don't have to worry about it breaking. You can also take advantage of their reduced fall damage when playing with the high velocity echo modifier, making T-Rans a pretty solid pick overall. Is putting them this high biased? Maybe, but I think they deserve it, trying to put my bias aside. Above the T-Ran is the Chrysid, which, if you're familiar with the Chrysid, you might be wondering why it's so high on this list. I mean, all they do is highlight someone attacking you, right? How often is someone just gonna poke you and run away to the point where you'll be unable to find them? It seems pretty useless. But they do have an additional use. The area in which they can be assassinated or backstabbed from is reduced. What's so special about this is that it actually reduces the range that you can get spine cuttered from, making Chrysids a solid defensive option against that talent. Additionally, you're further protected from assassin builds, which is always nice. Now, onto our only tier that has 3 aspects, the A tier. At the bottom of A tier is the Keyron, the newest aspect in Deepwoken. I honestly wouldn't be surprised as some of you have never even seen this in game, as it dropped pretty recently and most people aren't going to reroll for this aspect. However, it's not bad. The aspect is basically the rhythm murmur on a discount. If an event spawns or a player unsheathes their weapon, they get marked for a small bit of time on your screen, even if the player is behind a wall or in tacit. This is pretty helpful in avoiding ganks and in finding ganks, as well as just looking for specific events to spawn, which is why I think it deserves its spot in the A tier. Next, and similarly to the Adret, the quality of the Ganymede's buffs are pretty debatable. You gain 1.2x sanity from all sources, which is pretty useless in most situations. And additionally, Ganymedes make deep shrines cheaper. I find this to be much better than the Adret's buffs, as deep shrines can benefit you in many ways once you're power 20, and truly help you min-max your builds. Ganymedes will pretty much guarantee that you never have to use more than 1 Moon's Eye, or you may not even need a Moon's Eye in the first place, which I think is just pretty nice. Felinors have made it rather high on the list. I'll briefly mention that they get 1.2x passive agility, or 1.5x passive agility on wooden surfaces, which is rather handy in just playing around and climbing things, but it's not the sole reason they're this high on the list. The reason I put them so high is that they start with 20% stealth and gain 1.2x stealth from all sources. Okay, wow, threw a lot of numbers at you there, sorry. But what's good about this is that the stealth has a lot of positive benefits. For one, the higher your stealth, the smaller your tacit bubble is. On top of that, merely crouching without tacit will make it much harder for mobs and NPCs to see you, helping you avoid certain dangerous situations. Finally, with the authority exclusive Fatal Stealth talent, you deal more backstab damage based on how much stealth you have, making Felinors the absolute peak of assassin builds, which are pretty good despite being nerfed. And finally, the S tier, the best of the best, where we will see Vesperians. This just gives you free exoskeleton at power 1, and it stacks with exoskeleton as well. Honestly, it's such a broken talent, it's where you start to think aspect buffs are mostly cosmetic might be a lie. If you don't understand the strength that comes from the innate 5% damage reduction, I'm guessing you're newer to the game and it's hard to understand just how much 5% can really change things. Vesperians have been dominant for a long time and I don't see that changing anytime soon. However, there is one aspect that I find to be better than any of the previous ones, the con. Cons let you equip weapons 3 points below what you're supposed to equip them at, along with a little bit of boosted reputation with the 100 Legions. If you don't know how strong that is, let's use an extreme example. The Pyre Keeper. This weapon has 3 requirements, 25 heavy, 75 flame, and 10 light. With con, you can save 9 whole investment points, which you can just put elsewhere. This is extremely helpful in making meta min-max builds, and that is why I think cons will always be the best aspect in the game. Well, that's all I have for now. If you liked the video or found anything helpful, please consider subscribing or liking the video, as it really does help out a lot. If you disagree with me, feel free to let me know down in the comments. I'm still hoping to make Vow of Iron content, but it drops during my exam season now, so let's just say I might be a little bit late with that. Thank you all so much for watching, it really does mean the world to me, and I'll see you guys in the next one.